This is the Space Cowboy coming from the Interplanetary Good Vibe Zone, and today we're going to be slowing it down for a bit as far as the gameplay videos, and just going to be getting into some general, gameplay discussion topics, and also some reviews. And today I figure I start you off with a review of Trials of Mana. This is a game that came out 3 years ago. I believe it was April 24th in 2020. And this was a game that I was looking forward to at the time, and that I thoroughly enjoyed, and that I am still playing. And I never got a chance to really get my thoughts out. Well, considering that I just recently got back into making videos about almost a year ago, which is crazy to say already. But yeah, I just wanted to share my experience with the game and just say what I liked about it and everything. So, of course, if you enjoy these types of videos, please make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe for more. There will be plenty more gaming topics and just discussions coming, and more general reviews and all that stuff. So definitely subscribe to the channel and stick around for more of that stuff coming in. So, Trials of Mana is a part of the Mana series. If you don't know, if you do know, then of course the Mana series is a very famous franchise. It's actually probably the I don't want to say the progenitor of action RPGs, but it's definitely one of the most well known when it comes to to the action-based RPGs rather than the turn-based RPGs. And this is a Square Enix series, or well, more so SquareSoft, back in the day. But yeah, very popular series, and I did play the original Secret of Mana a little bit back in the day. I don't remember if I ever got the chance to beat the Secret of Mana, the original game, but I did play some of it as a kid. And I found out later on at a point that there was a third game that never got released, which was, of course, this with the Trials of Mana. And the Trials of Mana, got it got a re-release and a remake. Unfortunately, I think right now the re-release does only exist on the Switch only because of the collection of Mana where they got all three games. But I mean, it's okay. We got the remake, and we're just going to talk about that. So, Trials of Mana, the way Trials of Mana works is that you have six playable characters, and you can only select up to three of those characters on your playthrough. And of course, you have a general story with each of your main characters, but of course, you also have a second character that you can pick that are paired up together. You have specific pairs. So you have your three main pairs. Your first pair being Duran and Angela. Your second pair being Hawkeye and Reyes, and your third duo being Kevin and Charlotte. Charlotte. And that's pretty much those three give you like your general sort of like story thing. So pretty much you have your two main characters, or main-ish characters, because like I said, your first character that you pick is pretty much like the main character, but as long as if you pick the corresponding character of your main character, then that you'll have like your general, sort of story. And the third character pretty much just comes along for the ride. Think of it like a Pokemon character from from like the Pokemon anime, just kind of coming in, just being a part of the crew. Because um, now, as far as the gameplay goes, gameplay. Oh, wait, but well, before we do get to the gameplay, I guess I'll just get a little bit more into the story stuff. Now, there is a whole overarching story. It's very much, your classic JRPG kind of story, but I'm not saying that in a bad way. I generally just enjoyed the simplicity of it, of just being like a nice, fun, simple adventure, and you have, this grand quest that you have to achieve, and along the way you'll encounter a whole bunch of other sort of monsters and just, you know, people, characters, all that type of stuff. Um, and like I said, this game definitely does harbor a lot of just classic, JRPG isms, if you want to say. But it's fun. It's pretty decent for what it is. So to get into the gameplay stuff, gameplay is fun. The gameplay is fun. There is a combo system, but it's not like your Devil May Cry or your like stylistic combo kind of game. It is an action RPG, but with this game you have automated combos. So pretty much like, oh, square, 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 or square triangle, or square, square triangle, stuff like that. But the cool thing though is that as you level up and you get into your different classes, you do earn a little bit more combos, just to kind of give you a little bit more variety of it, rather than just having your regular square uh, automated combo, and then you have your square triangle, your square square triangle. Like I said, you earn a little bit more as you go along, which is fine. It's not like Infinity Strash. Like if I have recently played Dragon Quest, you enter of Die Infinity Strash, and that game's combat at its base is definitely simplistic. But the thing about that game is that it has animation canceling, to where with Trials of Mana you don't really have anything like that. You just kind of have like your list, as it were, of automated combos. Um, and that's pretty much it. You can dodge roll to kind of cancel, but it's not really per se canceling the animation. You're more so just kind of stopping your attack and you're dodging, and then you just kind of go back and you just press the buttons and you do your thing. Of course, though, more of the gameplay shines with more of your skills slash spells. That's pretty much where the crux of the gameplay kind of comes in. You have your class strike, which is essentially like your big super attack with that you use your meter for, and you just have like regular spells and skills that you can use for set characters. Um, Pretty much how it works. Say if I have Angela, who of course is the mage, which I guess I should also break that down. Well, not I guess I should break that down real quick. With your six main characters, so you have Duran, who is your warrior type character. You have Angela, who is your mage. You have Hawkeye. He's pretty much like your scout on ninja slash ninja kind of character. You have Charlotte, who is the overall healer. Your white mage. You have Reese. Oh, she's a warrior priest, warrior priestess, I should say. And then lastly, you have Kevin, who is just like your fighter, your brawler, your fighter character. So you can kind of tell the general gameplay just by the roles of these characters. The cool thing about this game though is that as you level up, you'll earn your opportunity to level up to a different class. So when you start off the game, you're at your base level. That's pretty much class one. Once you hit your different level requirements, and fulfill another prerequisite as you level up later on into the game, you'll level up your different classes. And the cool thing about this game is that there are branching paths. So for example, let's look at the character of Duran. So with Duran, you have his base class, his class 1, then or his base form, you can go to class 1, aka class 1. Now, when you level up, or when you get to about level 18, that's when you get to your second class. You can get your class 2. And when you first do this, you'll see that you have two different choices of selecting your class. And there's a light path and a dark path. And pretty much how that works is once you select those, whichever path you kind of select, that's where you go. So, for example, I chose the dark path, and I pretty much just went down further into the dark path. So for the light path, you do that's more of like, defensive, passive sort of stuff, while the dark path does tend to be a bit more offensive and stuff. And that applies for all characters. But the thing about that as well is that depending on which characters you have and which classes you choose, some of those characters do have very specific classes that fit into their role. So, like I said, with Duran, which you will see on this little picture that I'll have presented here, you have your class 2, and then that's the light path and the dark path. And whichever one of those you pick, once you get to class 3, you'll pretty much kind of have like this mismatch. So you'll have light, or light, dark. Same thing, vice versa. You'll have dark, dark, or dark, light. And that's pretty much like depending on what you do, you'll have like a mixture or a balance, or you can just focus on that path and solely on that path. And then, because there is a post game after you beat the main story, there is a post game, and you can unlock your final class, which is class 4, your final class for that path. And pretty much like I said, so if you chose the light class, if you chose the light path, even if you do like light dark or whatever like that, you're gonna at the final thing you're gonna get the light dark. I mean, you're gonna get the class 4 in the light path, and then same thing if you choose the dark path, and all that stuff. And it is really cool because you do get the variety of all the different combat. You get to mess around with the different classes and see what you can do. Because you can also reset your classes with a certain item, um, that you can earn later on down the point within the game. So, say if you do go down one path and you don't feel satisfied with what you chose, well, you can pretty much reset yourself and then just kind of mess around and pick something else, and you'll be all good to go. And again, it goes for all characters. Another thing I will say though about this is that because of how the game kind of works and everything, there is definitely a notion for the best class slash build for some of these characters. So Angela, of course, who is the mage, she pretty much has the highest DPS in the entire game out of all the characters. And I do believe whether you go down the light or dark path, I think for her it's okay. She'll still have her DPS and all that stuff. But I think her light path might be the best, or might be the dark. But pretty much for her, going down either one is fine, kind of okay. But then you have a character like Duran, where if you go down the light path, obviously he'll be more of what his character does end up becoming, more of like a heroic knight-esque character with different defensive and healing abilities and all that stuff. Especially because he is the only character in the game who can use a shield, so he is the only character in the game who can block. Then you have a character like Hawkeye, where one of his specific paths, he becomes more of a ninja-esque character. He has very specific abilities to himself that allow you to have better or acquire better rewards, earn more EXP during battles and all that stuff for your team. Charlotte, like I said, she is literally just the raw healer, so going more of a dark path for her is completely useless because she can apply a whole bunch of different healing kind of abilities and stuff like that. Reese is an interesting one because she is a warrior priestess, and depending on which path you go down, you can go down the light path, which allows her to become more of a support s character. She can still do stuff for herself. She can still deal damage, but she'll also have buffs applicable for her for your allies and all that stuff. Or to whereas though if you go down the other path, she'll become more of a debuffer. Which that's what I did my first playthrough. I did Duran, Angela, and Reese, and I pretty much just went for all out balls to the wall, just damage playthrough, and I just you know I pretty much bulldozed my way through the bosses and all that stuff. Um, and there are definitely team builds. There are some videos out there where you can look them up. You can probably search them up on YouTube, and they are still there, where people do kind of talk about like the best builds for this, like what are the best character builds, or what are the best team builds, like which characters you should use and all that stuff. But I will say, play the game however you want to. You don't have to follow anybody's through line for how you want to play the game. If you want to have all three of the male characters on one team, you could perfectly do that. If you want to have all three of the female characters on one playthrough, you can totally do that. If you want to, you can mix and match any of the characters. It does not matter. You play the game however you want to, and I do think that's a cool thing about the game. And of course, another thing I forgot to mention is that as you do level up, of course, you'll earn and unlock more abilities, including your class strikes. And the class strikes are definitely very appealing. Once you start leveling up and get into those higher classes and stuff, and unlock more of your class strikes, which that's what they're called, the class strikes. You could definitely see the visual appeal in them. Some of them do look pretty sweet and pretty cool to mess around with. So definitely, take note of that if you ever do play the game. Um, of course, you are also having items and all this stuff. You can collect a whole bunch of different types of items, whether it's healing items, whether it's offensive stuff, support stuff, all that type of stuff. You can have a lot of items, and you do have a item wheel that you can equip mid, mid moving around on the map and stuff, whether you're just out there moving around in the world or if you're in a fight. Although, if you do encounter any enemies slash bosses, you are only able to use up to 9 items um, at a time within that encounter, which is not the worst considering, like I said, um, if you're gonna play well, if you're gonna have a healer on your team, I would say it's not a problem. If you don't have a healer like I did, definitely do exercise some kind of caution, just because Duran and Charlotte are the only healers in the game. So if you don't have either of those two characters in your playthrough, depending on who you start off with first, then yeah, you may run into some issues down the line in terms of trying to keep the characters and stuff alive. And that's a good segue into something that is somewhat of an issue, but not the absolute worst thing, and that is the AI. And that's more specifically the AI for your companions. They can be a little rough sometimes. The AI, like I said, it's not terrible. They will actually perform pretty decently well. The AI will kind of be at random sometimes, but if your AI for your character knows if you're in a certain situation, like there's been plenty of situations where whether in the current playthrough I just had with Kevin, Charlotte, and Hawkeye, with whether I'm using Hawkeye or Kevin, either one of those characters, and I'm not using Charlotte. If her health or our health is low enough, she'll just go ahead and pop a heal, or if we're affected by a status ailment, they will just pop that as well. Like it kind of does know when to do certain things, but there are times where it's still a bit more beneficial for you to take over and just fight, because obviously you can switch your characters around mid battle and stuff, so you can kind of know when to get involved into a certain situation and do all that stuff yourself. Now, one minor thing I guess I can get into is just the voice performances in the game. The voice performances in the game are okay. It's nothing crazy or anything like that. I played the game in the Japanese instead of the English because the English performances are a little bit, less than average. Like, again, it's not horrible, but it's very much your sort of, I guess, for kids kind of performance, especially with the character. With It's funny enough because I mentioned Charlotte and Kevin before, and Charlotte is very much like she's not a kid. She's a teenager just like everybody else, but she is like that sort of like little girl esque archetype. So she kind of talks like this and says please and all that type of stuff, like very like kiddish way of talking, and it's like it's kind of annoying. And then of course, it doesn't make it any better because you have a character like Kevin, who he is a beastman. He is a human that can transform into a humanoid, like werewolf. And he talks in a very like broken English caveman esque way. So of course you pair those two characters together, and it can be pretty annoying. So I kind of just I couldn't bear to listen to it in English. It was pretty egregious. So I just pretty much went ahead and played with the game and just Japanese and just kind of played through there. Um, Story, like I said, I mentioned before, story is nothing too crazy. There are separate stories and all that stuff, but I kind of wanted. I was thinking about it before, and a change that I personally would have liked to make myself to make the story feel a bit more thorough, a bit more streamlined, and a bit more cohesive is if you could have um, you could have all six playable characters. You can have all six of the characters. You can just swap out between the six characters and have up to three characters. Make the plots feel a bit more intertwined, because I do kind of feel like the game does suffer a bit in terms of the story, because everything feels so much more separated than I personally think it should be. Just because, again, a lot of the core plot points do cross over with each other. Like a lot of the focal boss characters and like certain characters do intertwine with each other, and it feels a bit weird because of how the core game is structured, in you having your main character and then your corresponding secondary character, and then the third character is just like a whatever come along for the ride kind of thing. So I definitely think this game would have benefited a bit more if they definitely took some liberties to change story elements around. Just because this game already is a remake from the original, there's already some differences from the original game compared to the 2020 remake. So, this game does definitely feel a bit like a remaster rather than a remake at some times. But there are enough differences to where you can kind of separate, the remake from the original. Enemy encounters weren't that crazy. Obviously, you have a bunch of enemies lying around everywhere. You do have this new thing that you can collect. Where well, I don't know if it's new. I don't know if it's the original game or not. But you have these cactus esque creatures that you can capture in the game, and collecting a certain amount of those will apply you with certain abilities, or I shouldn't say abilities, but more so bonus passives. So like extra exp during a battle, or discounts off certain items in stores, stuff like that, which is pretty nice to keep, as it's pretty nice to keep an eye out on as like the collectible element of the game, as well as wanting to earn those extra passive abilities to help you out throughout your gameplay. You also have these items called item seeds, and they pretty much sound exactly what they sound like. These are seeds that you can plant, and they will grant you pretty much about anything in the game. Like, any sort of item, whether it's class items that you need later on down the line for your class to level up your classes. Simple stuff like the healing items. Even cool limited items that you can feed your characters in order to increase, certain stats and abilities and all that type of stuff, and you can actually collect a great amount of them. And there is a leveling system to it too. So there's like bronze, silver, gold, and then like the question mark ones are usually the class ones, and then the rainbow item seeds are pretty much like the best items that you can have. Although I do believe you could still have the possibility of getting like more items than the rainbow item within the rainbow item seeds, but the rainbow item seeds do usually tend to be like more of like the higher rare things that you can't just obtain through beating enemies, or buying them in the shops, which adds to that extra element of exploring and farming and all that good stuff. Another thing I also want to mention real quick is the music. I think the music's okay. It's not the absolute best, but it does fit more of that sort of Saturday cartoon esque kind of feel. It feels a bit more like an adventure. A bit more of like a fantasy adventure kind of thing. But the music is still pretty nice. Like I do think I do think they did a good job in composing the music, and you can actually switch from the original to the remake. So if you want to hear more of like the older 8-bit esque tracks from the original game, you have the option to switch that over. Or if you want more of like the modern tunes, you can definitely switch over or just keep it on the remake option for the music. And again, it does have good music. I do like some of the choices for the instruments and stuff that they used. Like I said, I enjoy it. It definitely does immerse you into that adventure kind of feel and stuff like that. One thing, I guess now another thing I guess I could critique real quick is the bosses don't really feel too challenging. There are some bosses that kind of have some minor annoying things. But other than that, it's nothing where it provides like the craziest amount of, like, or opposes the greatest amount of challenge towards you. It does feel like the game can feel a bit more easy at some points. Um, and it just would be nice to have the game provide you with a little bit more of a challenge, because outside of like a couple of the enemy types in the game, none of them really provide that much like opposition to you. I think some of the only enemies that are actually legitimately annoying are the ones who will inflict status ailments because there are, obviously they can do that. Like certain enemies can, stop you from being able to use your skills or spells. Some of them might just straight up like freeze you. Like a whole bunch of type of stuff. So it would be nice to see just the bosses give you a bit more of the opposition because, like I said, outside of like a couple of the specific bosses, it can be kind of a cakewalk sometimes, especially depending on some of the characters that you're using, and like if your character's a high level enough, and you got like obviously you got your stats and all that stuff, and you got your items, like your armor and your sword, like your weapons and all that stuff. You're kind of gonna run through pretty well. So definitely provide a bit more of a challenge by maybe increasing the difficulty on the bosses. That could have improved the experience a bit more. Well, the leveling up experience is pretty okay. You get to level up, and as you level up, you'll earn BP, and you can put the BP into these different trees, being like your strength, your skill, CT, your dexterity, all that type of stuff, which pretty much are like your power, health, um, luck, and all that stuff. And those will, as you level up, not only will you level up your raw stats, but you'll earn those passive abilities that will allow you to give your characters more to do in the battle, which again, really fun, really cool to see what your characters can do. And another thing I did forget to mention that I think is pretty neat is, as you know, in a aesthetic way anyway, is that when you do level up and you get your classes, you will have your characters change in appearance. And I do think they can be pretty cool. Although, of course, with uh, two of the female characters, I'm going to let you guess who they are for obvious reasons. Some of the outfits can become a bit too much, but classic JRPG stuff, I guess, or whatever. You know what it is. Uh, but yeah, the outfits do look good and they look cool. And not even just the characters and the outfits, but just the game itself. This game actually does. I like the way they kind of went with it as far as like the art style that they chose. I do think the game does look very pretty. The settings do look very nice as well, and that's one thing I will say. I do think this game. Another good thing about this game is that it does do a good job of making the world feel a bit more lively. It doesn't feel too dull, at least as far as the settings and stuff go. NPCs don't really do much. NPCs kind of just stand around. They don't. There's not really much activity as far as the NPCs go. Even when you go up to talk to them, it's pretty much like a simple like, oh, you stand there and they're standing there, and a text box just pops up and it's like you hear what they say. Like having more interaction with the NPCs could have felt a bit more nice and all that stuff. I mean, overall, my experience it was nice. Like I said, I enjoyed the game. I thoroughly enjoyed the game. I beat the game twice, so because I'm also trying to trophy hunt in that game to get the trophies and all that stuff. But I do think the game is fun enough to where you can warrant a second playthrough, especially because, like I said, depending on how your first playthrough may go, and depending on which three characters you chose, you're definitely going to want to do a second playthrough just to check out the other characters and see how they work. And then, hey, if you want to keep playing the game, you have your post game, and it'll give you more activities. And also, oh yeah, I guess that's a point that I can also make as well before I do close this out, and that is that even after you beat the game, there is more to do. There is a post game story. There's a couple of post game bosses, and just of course, having the ability to go class 4, and just you can go around in the world and just go crazy and you know mess around with your OP characters and just wreak havoc, have fun, and enjoy yourself. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to talk about with the game. If there is anything else, if you do have any questions, you can just put them in the comments, and I'll probably just answer you back. But like I said, my overall experience playing the game, it was fun. It was a solid game. I was satisfied. Uh, like I said, there are a couple of like changes I would have made to maybe change up the game, but that's more so for my personal taste, or like my personal desires for what the game could have been. Because, like I said, it's not like this game was a turn-based RPG when it came out. Like this, like when it came out, it was exactly what the game was now. Barring like some changes here and there, it's like for the modern era and all that stuff. But yeah, Trials of Mana, it's very fun. I would recommend the game. I don't know if they changed the prices. I can't remember if it was a full $60 game when I bought it. Granted, this was 3 years ago, so it's been a minute. But I think the game is $40. It might be 40 or $50. So definitely check out the game whenever you have your spare time. I don't know if there's any sales, at least when it comes to consoles. I'm pretty sure there might be some sales at some point as far as Nintendo on the Switch goes, and I don't maybe even Steam. Although I don't believe the game is on Steam. I'm not sure. But yeah, Trials of Mana, like I said, very fun game. Definitely is worth your time if you are a fan of JRPGs and all that stuff. So with that being said, make sure you like the video. Let's get this video to 10 likes at least. I want to see 20. I would like to see 20 likes, but let's see this video get to 10 likes. If you did play Trials of Mana yourself, tell me about your experience. Tell me what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, maybe what you would have considered uh, doing with the game to improve it if you had that choice to do so. All that good stuff. Or if you want to try the game out, and feel free to try it out. If you have any questions about it, of course, like I said, comment. Um, Make sure you subscribe, of course, as always. Make sure you hit the notification bell so that you never miss any updates um, on uploads or live streams and all that stuff. And make sure you're watching the videos because I am checking my analytics for the watch time and everything. And yeah, this is the Space Cowboy signing off. I hope you guys have a good night. See you in the next video. There's going to be a lot more of this stuff coming.